Hey, what's up, everyone? Travis and John here with the intro to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. As usual, we have a very special guest on this episode. If it looks like we changed clothes, it's because it's a couple days later. We got a little busy and completely forgot to record the intro right after the episode.
And it was only a day later.
Yeah, and I was a little drunk also during that. We drank. What was the beverage?
That was some Four Monkeys Scotch.
Yeah, it was intense. It was good though. I just recently started drinking like whiskey straight, tell you the truth. Before that, it was just.
I mean, it's a weight loss tip. If you want to cut down on the calories and you don't want to upset stomach, then Scotch and whiskey, that's the way to go.
I don't know if that's true or not. Someone wants to fact check that. No, but we have a special guest. Like I said, we have Adolfo Foronda. He is the host of the Forever White Belt podcast. If you guys have not heard his podcast before, all the information will be down in the description below, in the podcast notes, and on the YouTube channel too. I'll link everything for his podcast. But it's great. He is a fantastic guy. Super down to earth. He's kind of the same realm of Rick Ellis, who we just had on the podcast, which I didn't think that they were going to have so much similarities, but he mentioned it from the get-go that he really enjoyed the episode. How'd you like that?
I really liked it. He's an easy guy to like, and I think everyone will kind of relate to his story a little bit, especially when he talks about some jiu-jitsu drive-bys. But I'll let you guys listen to that.
Yeah. There's just some of the things we cover. Yeah, he talks about getting his foot in the door, finally taking that that leap of faith into jiu-jitsu, going through a major injury, being older in jiu-jitsu once again, and just kind of like staying motivated while in jiu-jitsu. It's a great episode. We could have gone on forever and ever, but I think everyone at home enjoys the 1 hour episodes instead of multi-hour episodes, to tell you the truth. So, but if you guys would like to go check him out, once again, that is Forever White Belt Podcast. He has nothing but phenomenal guests on there also. Some of the biggest names in jiu-jitsu have been on his show. I'm actually kind of jealous at some points because he gets some people. I'm like, I don't even know who that is, but it looks like they're pretty popular. So, but with that, we're going to go ahead and send you guys over to the episode. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. We're Elbows Tight Podcast everywhere, elbowstight.com. Go to our YouTube page. Our YouTube page I've been posting a lot more on. If you guys haven't seen, we have shorts, clips, full episodes. We're going to be having technique coming out soon. And also, we have a surprise in the mail coming to us that we'll talk about in a little bit. So also, don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes podcast, because it helps gets us out there and puts us in the algorithm so more people can see us. But other than that, John, you got anything?
I don't. Enjoy the listen.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you later. Peace. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. It's your host, Travis and John. John, how you doing today?
I'm pretty sore. How you doing?
I'm not sore because I wasn't underneath me for the seminar.
Oh, all right. That's true.
What are you sore from?
I think you crushing my chest most of the day today.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
We had to do some neon belly drills, and I felt kind of bad for a second because Arthur Ruff, he came to our school, did a free seminar with us and whatnot, and he's like, I want you guys to do the neon belly from side to side, and he's like, I don't want you to do where you just windshield wiper the knee to and whatnot. He's like, I want you to get air and like jump over the person. And so I might have accidentally got a little too hot with one of my knees and jammed it straight into John's sternum and ribs.
It was weird. He was smiling when he did it, but he said it was accidental.
I would never in a million years do that. I did. So, but for today's interview, we have a very special guest. His name is Adolfo Foronda. He runs the Forever White Belt podcast. Easily my favorite podcast for jiu-jitsu. Probably honestly the only one I listen to is his show, and there's a reason behind it because he is a fantastic interviewer, has amazing guests and whatnot, and we were lucky enough to have him today. So how you doing today, Adolfo?
Good. Thanks for having me on, guys. Totally appreciate this.
No problem at all. I appreciate you having me on your show. If you guys haven't listened to that episode yet, please go check out his his podcast. I was on it. I talk about it. I definitely had imposter syndrome on it. So
no, it was good.
Man.
I listened to it, and it was weird. Travis made us ask for autographs for a good solid week after that.
Just 8x10 glossies at the Academy.
Yeah. I was like, do you know who you're talking to? I've been on a podcast, someone else's podcast. All right. So, but hey, without any further ado, let's go ahead. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself for us, for the people at home, and give us a little bit of background of how you got into the jiu-jitsu?
Sure. So, like Travis said, I'm Adolfo Foronda. I'm a 51-year-old two-stripe blue belt at this point. Just like it's the typical story. Like, whenever we interview anyone, it's, UFC and the old stuff that we've seen, the fights and stuff. And it's funny because as a kid, we all tried different forms of karate, kung fu, at least if you're in my demographic. And, I wasn't into getting hit all the time and kicked and punched, and that just wasn't my jam. Plus, I was kind of a smaller, in-between kind of sized guy always. And I was like Joe Average, if you will. Average everything, right? Just standard guy. Very bland man. So I never really excelled at that kind of stuff. And then when I saw, obviously, the UFC and the success that, Hoist was having and that kind of thing, I'm like, this is intriguing. This isn't as hardcore, it seemed at the time, as wrestling. But I like the no impact time in terms of kicking and all that stuff. So that I gravitated to that a lot. I was a lurker for several years, like in terms of just like doing YouTube searches on jiu-jitsu and that kind of thing. And early on, it was, really kind of questionable sort of jiu-jitsu material on YouTube in the very beginning days. And then, going from there and actually calling academies. And I was always one of those freaks that needed to be over-prepared for everything. So I was always asking in terms of logistics and all these things. And then I just wouldn't show up, right? I would just sort of chicken out. And just oftentimes driving in front of academies and that whole thing. And finally, at one point, I got the courage. It was a place near my work. Homo Mello is a black belt under Hoyler. And I went in one day, and he was a gentleman to me, and he was great. And went from there, and I had just a fantastic time. And I thought, hey, I can do this. And that was like in my 40s, when I went in for the first time.
So you walked in, and you had been kind of window shopping for a couple years, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah.
What was that final I just got to do it thing? Was it the school close to work? Like it was kind of like a convenience thing, or was it you just kind of like, I just got to go. There's no reason for me to keep procrastinating on this.
Yeah, I think that was it. It was the whole procrastination thing. And I don't know, I think all of us sort of have this weird draw to jiu-jitsu, especially when you've stayed into it past, let's say, even the late stages of white belt, right? I was compelled to go for whatever reason. I don't know what it was, but it was this thing like I got to do this. I have to do this, and which is really weird when you find that thing, which is like your thing, right? And the proximity of the academy to my work, which was only a few blocks away, was a big help too. There were academies near where I lived in San Francisco at the time too. Gilbert Melendez had El Nino down the street from me. He was a UFC fighter, champion, if you guys don't know, sometime back. And I went there. He was a total gentleman once. But I literally walked in, talked to him. I said, he had just opened El Nino Academy. And I saw these, they had the octagon in his place. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of scary, but they're really nice. And then I walked out. I never went back, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. But then I went to Home Lamello's up in, near my work. And yeah, it was a very welcoming environment. And he knew what he was getting when I walked in the door. It was a very different type of demographic. But it was nice to see, working people there and, just all the different types of people that were there. And I thought, I can work with this. And it was a lot of fun. I just felt compelled to do it all. And, as me and Travis had talked about on my podcast too, I was a nightmare at first to roll with because I was just, very spazzy, as you could say,
I can totally relate to the drive-bys because when I was in San Diego looking for a place to train, I would drive by, look at them, and I would talk to them online first. And then I'd go drive by and I was like, nope, not going there. Nope,
really?
Not going there.
Oh, good. It's not just me then.
Yeah, and I like to do my research too. Before competing, I went and watched everyone else compete, took notes,
Wow.
And then I was like, all right, next time I'll do it. So I just learned from watching them, but same way. Absolutely.
Yeah, John was about the same age. as you mentioned, you were in your 41 is when you started, and John started
39, right before I turned 40.
Yeah, it was like right before he turned 40, and I don't know, maybe you guys can relate on what was it that just that nipped you in the butt, especially so late, or as some would say later in life. What was it after your first class that kind of grabbed you the most?
I think it was that, I could do, some things. I could pull off some things, whether it was just, a basic shrimp or a frame or, something like that. And honestly, it was just something in my head at this point going, I'm on the back nine of my life, sort of, and I'm like, I need to get this done. I need to stick with this and not quit, because it's funny, because I just talked to a guest who I interviewed on my show, Michael Courier, who's a fantastic black belt. And he's the first guy that I've talked to when one of the questions I ask oftentimes is, have you ever thought of quitting? And he's like, oh yeah, I was a quitter. I was totally a quitter. He's like, I was basically a professional gymnast and all this stuff. And I quit this and I quit that. I could have been like a D1 wrestler or whatever the hell. And I quit this. And I'm like, oh my God, finally I found someone else. I was one of these guys where I'd start something and I was okay at it. Like I said, I was average guy, right? And I'm like, well, maybe it's not for me. I'm not the best at it. So, I'll move on to the next thing. So my joke with a lot of my friends is that you open my closet and you see the karate gi, the unicycle, the juggling things, all these things that you try to quit, right? And it was just this thing. I'm like, this time I made the decision that I'm not going to quit this thing. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I love it,
Yeah. So you mentioned a karate gi. Did you do other martial arts growing up? And then you kind of were always in the spectrum of martial arts, and then took a hiatus, and then found yourself in it again with jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. So there was kung fu and karate early on, But again, it was I was a smaller guy, and a lot of my peers. They had mustaches when they were in elementary school, and muscles and stuff like that. And I was like the opposite,
TRT, baby.
Guy. It's just insane. I'm like, I cannot, hang with these guys who are like, kicking and punching me through walls here. I'm like, this is not for me. And, that's the kind of mindset that gets infected, unfortunately, in some people, that you see. And then other people, persevere through those things. And a lot of the people that we interview and stuff like that, right? And it's, and then you learn, you're like, oh, wow, you got to stick to it. I've heard you guys talk before too. Sometimes, I got smashed or someone pulled something off on me, and I thought, I got to learn this. This is awesome. I got to learn this. Where I came from the other perspective. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, he did this to me. This isn't for me. You know what I mean? Just a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. My son is very much like that. When he first started, he would get discouraged a lot, and we would leave class, and he's like, how do I stop these people from doing this? Like I'm not getting any better, kind of thing. And it's like, look, man, like, it's not not everyone's gonna be natural at it, unfortunately, right? But it's the perseverance, like you mentioned. Like you just gotta keep trying, And like, what was your motivation to keep going, even though, like you mentioned, you were kind of on the side, the spectrum of like, man, I'm just getting my butt kicked.
Yeah, it wasn't no punches and kicks. That was huge, right? So, I think I've heard someone describe Marcelo Garcia as like he's expert at this kinetic language, and I really felt that too the first time I did it too. I'm like, we can have this conversation on the mats where we're not hurting each other, because I'm not big on hurting people too. Is one of my faults. I think is one of my things. But also, I can tap out, right? I can choose where my limit is. And, my limit was here. And then as we go through the years of this thing, it can change, right? You can adapt or whatever too. So I thought that was a beautiful thing. Plus it's so cerebral too. You know what I mean? Like when you're going through everything, when you can finally observe what's happening at the early stages, not that I'm on its sort of late stage of this, and start seeing, oh wow!
You got your second stripe, man. You're a very seasoned.
Yeah, you're killing it right now. What are you talking about?
You're a 2-stripe white belt. You're right, or a 2-stripe blue belt. You're right up.
How dare you, Travis? I know what's going through your head.
Salty.
It is interesting though. What drives us to continue, right?
It's true.
It's interesting.
It's like what we talked about during the Nathan Orchard podcast. I just repurposed this and put it out on YouTube. But we were talking about our definition of what a badass is, right? It's like before seeing a badass, like someone that's like holds their head up high, and it's like they're like, man, that guy looks tough.
It's like Bam Bam Bigelow. I'm like, damn, that dude's
right.
badass.
Bam Bam
And
Bigelow.
he meets Major Payne. He didn't look like a badass.
If you guys don't know who Bam Bam Bigelow is, she's too young for you, bro. But no, but it's now our definition is the guy that just like when he comes to class and he's just a smaller guy. He's not the best at jiu-jitsu, but the guy shows up or girl shows up every time they possibly can and puts in the work. Like that's a badass, right? Like that is someone that is like looking life in the head, right, with the headlights on him. Like, look, dude, I'm okay. Like this is gonna be the worst thing that happens to me, and honestly, it's against someone that's better trained than I am. So hopefully, if someone's in the streets with me, they don't know jujitsu.
Yeah.
So, so you said you started in your early 40s and you're in your early 50s now. How soon? Well,
I gotta
what
clarify
happened?
something real quick. Did you start in your 40s or 50s?
Well, that's the thing. So there's some things to this here, right? So
I was about to say,
because he kept saying it, and I'm like, look, I listened to your first intro on Forever White Belt.
Yeah.
And I was like, did it just say he started at 50? And I was like, let me rewind.
Yeah. So
50. I was
kind
like,
of
rewind
mid-40s.
again. Okay, all right. It was throwing me off. I was like, I was like,
well, there was
damn.
there was a 4-year
All right.
gap there, and so the thing was
Yeah.
like I was 2 years at the first academy in San Francisco, and then I had I had a hernia surgery that I had to do, right? So that sidelined me for a little bit, and that was one of the things that got in my head, right? But that's kind of a minor procedure, right? That someone can get through and come back into, I don't know, anywhere from 2 to 6 months or something like that. So there was that, and then shortly after that, I don't know, about a year, maybe six months after that, I had this gnarly gallstone thing happen in me. I was eating one of those high-fat diets, and that everyone does, right? Little did I know, and my parents and my extended family being Catholics, we deny everything. We don't talk about health or anything like that. And I had a proclivity. My family has a proclivity to having gallbladders removed, right? We can't handle like high fat stuff. So I had a really gnarly case of gallstones, really bad, to the point where I was driving on the Golden Gate Bridge and I'm about to pass out. And behind me is like a bus, a transit bus, and in front of me is one of those double-decker tourist buses, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna pass out, driving on the Golden Gate Bridge. This is not good. So I pull over. I'm like, I'm gonna make it to this exit. I'm gonna make it. I made it to the exit right after the bridge. I get super sick. I think maybe I got food poisoning or something like that. It goes through the night. My wife, I'm like, no, I'll be fine. My wife's like, let's go to the hospital. Let's go to the hospital. Nah, I'll be fine. I'll work it out. I'm in the fetal position in the bathroom for forever. I get to the hospital. They're like, oh my God, you're in bad shape, man. So they take me right into the hospital. They're like, they're assessing everything, and they're realizing that, I need to get this gallbladder removed, but it's so bad by all the tests that they've seen, they think it's possibly gangrene inside of me, right? So they're
wow.
like, they might not be able to clean out all the stones. I know we're getting a bit gnarly here, but so be it. And so they're not sure if they want to go through the procedures because they don't know if they can sort of clean it all out because it might have just been all inside of me at this point, right? So they don't know if it's worth opening me up. So they keep me in the hospital for like 5 days, and for those 5 days, they're not allowing me to eat, right? I'm on a water diet. So I'm fasted for 5 days. And so by the 5th day, I'm super gaunt, obviously, right? And I'm begging them, please get this out of me or feed me, because I can't deal anymore. Laying here, just do it. And the surgeons were all, they were all conferring with each other and the other surgeons in the local area, all these crazy experts. And they're finally, okay, let's do it. Let's get it out. And they got it out. That next meal was the greatest meal of my life. It was almost like an airplane food meal.
I'm like, was it
thing.
Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes? That's all I'm imagining from the hospital.
French toast and scrambled eggs and the little cup of yogurt. It was nothing, but it was like heaven to me, man. But anyways, long story long, they that took a while to come back from that one because that was a pretty gnarly surgery, and I got a pretty big scar, and it took a long time. So that was my sort of 2-year gap there of where I'm like, all right, jiu-jitsu is probably out of the cards, because I'm just so, I'm injury prone. I'm like surgery prone here. And then you get that itch, and I got that calling again, in my later 40s, right? In my 50 at this point or whatever. And so there was that 4-year gap. And so I went back and went to here in Nevada in Marin County in North Bay Jiu-Jitsu under Tryfon Stathopoulos. And he was fantastic. And again, there's, like at most academies, there's people of all ages and kids and everything. And you're like, all right, let's see if they'll ease me into it. And you're working a lot smarter at that point, and then you're going super hard like we did today,
So after your surgery, have you had any like side effects or weaknesses that you can feel in because with a scar that big, is your core strength affected by it? Can you not do certain things because of it, or are you perfectly okay now?
It's funny you ask that, because I've had debates online with a lot of jiu-jitsu experts in terms of grappling dummies, right? Grappling dummies is always a thing. A lot of, for whatever reason, we get contentious about. It's really ridiculous, but it served a huge purpose for me and for someone who's coming back from a gnarly injury, in terms of just to test out what you can and can't sort of take, right? So it's really cool in terms of I've had rib injuries and all these things. It's like, how much can I lift? How much can I twist? Can I pull a knee slide off? Can I have a guy on side control on me? Or I have a very heavy grappling dummy. It's very expensive and very heavy. And so I'm testing all this stuff. And so there were degrees of where I can't do this month. Oh, wow, I can do it this month. And I can't do that this month, right? So these little iterations with the grappling dummy that really helped. And obviously with training partners too, eventually. But you were that guy, right? So you were that guy who was kind of like, can we go light? Can we go easy? Can we go?
Yeah.
Can you not like lay on me, but I can, squash you, or you know what I mean? So it was a really interesting process coming back from that.
So what was your biggest lesson learned since that surgery? Do you kind of train a little bit softer? Well, I don't want to say softer. I don't want to insult you, but do you train like a little bit more smarter now? And you're like, look, like I got, especially being in your early 50s, has that affected your training at all? Or do you have the days like you do today where you're just like, look, I'm getting after it. Like we're going, boys.
I'm pretty much 100% now, right? So I'm back, and if anything, those things really help you emphasize on things like just being fit to some extent, right? Or going to jiu-jitsu regularly in order to get sort of jiu-jitsu fit, right? If you're not doing a lot of strength training or something like that, which I'm not, doing a lot of strength training, and I'm actually look to you guys for a lot of that information too. But so I'm pretty much back to normal and going as hard as I can. But in terms of being a middle-aged, practitioner, I have to choose my partners carefully, and I have to, view them pretty closely at first, because I didn't for a long time. And when I got back into it and I felt like I could go, I felt like I was trying to go like I'm a 20 or 30-year-old again, and that just doesn't, I'm in for the marathon at this point. So it's every day is different. There's light days, there's hard days, there's in-between days. It's very nuanced at this age.
That's an interesting point you bring up, because I'm in the same situation, right? And luckily, the black belt we're under, same age as me. So when he talks, he's like, hey, you got to use structure. You got to be sound. You got to have excellent technique. And I'm like, man, yeah, he's absolutely right. And, I find myself wanting to roll hard with the guys that are in their 20s and 30s. And I might be 100%, but it's still different. And you're right. It's real interesting at this point. I'm real picky on my rolling partners. And I just try to be as safe as I possibly can when I'm rolling at this point.
So what do you do, John? Maybe Adolfo can take something from it, or maybe you could take something from Adolfo. Like, what do you do besides picking your best partner, like the best partner possible? Like, what other things are in your head when you're doing it?
Well, I mean, honestly, I try to be, I guess when I'm rolling and it's a really big guy, like my partners the last couple of days have been 240, 250, 6'2", 6'3".
I'm not that big.
And, I'm about 175, 180 right now, and I'm 5'7". For one, I try to stay not underneath them. And I try to brace as much as I can. I use my knees and elbows, and I set up blocks, and I keep the weight off of me. And, I honestly, I just try to tire them out. I let them attack the whole time, and then I'll move from there. But, I think it's an interesting point you bring up. I just think as you get older, and Billy, I don't know if you've listened to any of our podcasts with Billy. I take a lot from Billy. He rolls with pretty much everyone. He's in his 50s, and he's real smart when he rolls. He picks his partners. He's very defensive, and I feel like you have to do that if you want to stay in it for the long term.
Yeah, it's funny how it does a lot, and I can relate because I put a heavy focus on defensive BJJ at this point, right? Too. At first, it was all I thought I have to learn the offense, I have to learn the submissions, and as we all gravitate towards that. It's funny because I had a brand new day one white belt ask me. He was just signing up the other day, and he's like, "What kind of advice would you give me?" And it's weird to sort of try to give someone like that a succinct answer, because in your head you might have that narrative, but it changes all the time, right? Based on your age, your weight, your gender, and all kinds of factors. But so I just told him from within the context of where I'm at right now, right? I'm like, yeah, defense, survival, frames, breathing, right? Cardio, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's so important. I've gotten proficient at the turtle now, of all things, right? I've watched a lot of
actually a couple times today went to that.
Yeah, and it's surprisingly nuanced, right? That whole game. I've studied a lot of Preet Mikkelson's game. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He's really popularized a lot of turtle and these various sort of defensive positions, and then you realize how technical that game can be too, and just how many bad actually turtles there are out there, right? And how far you can really survive, and I don't know. It's been a really interesting perspective, because that opens up other possible attacks too once you escape those kind of things. With big guys, or as you mentioned, I'm 170 as well, right? I'm vacillate between 165, 170, typically in the 170 range, and I'm getting in a lot of that defensive type of positions if I have to go with someone heavier, right? Which is often. So often I'm playing turtle, I'm, scrambling out of turtles into other kind of positions, maybe open guard kind of stuff. So it's learning that type of defensive stuff and transitions, which have really benefited someone like me at this point in my life.
So touching on your game, how was your game evolved, and what is your game now? Like how do you bait people, or what's your go-to kind of thing?
I tend to now I'm a big sort of proponent of take what they give you kind of thing, right? But I find myself a lot in the side guard, oddly enough. So when you're in like this closed guard position, you shift your hips just slightly, right? Mm-hmm. And then if you can sometimes get that 2-on-1. Michael Lear Jr. actually is fantastic at this. And then suddenly you're on the side of them. And I'm built like a troll in that I have this very short sort of torso, like maybe 2 feet high, and my legs are about 7 feet long, so I can do this thing where I'm sort of on the side of you, and I can grip your armpit on your far side there, and my leg can wrap around. And if your leg doesn't get far enough away, and it's sort of difficult, there's a really great chance that I'm gonna get out of that position, or I'm gonna get your back, right? Or I'm gonna get on your back. So this side guard position is just a fascinating thing. And also from there, there's omoplata, there's all kinds of stuff, right? That really weird stuff that some other people have taught me. So yeah, I really enjoy the side guard game a lot.
You've been playing any butterfly? Because I'm with you. I do a lot of side guard, but now I'm trying to transition into a lot of butterfly.
Not so much. I tried it for a while because I was watching a lot of what Adam Wardynski was doing, right? And I was so inspired by that, that sort of old school butterfly type of game. And it's been modernized too, and into fantastic success for someone like him. And, I've tried, and I haven't gotten proficient at it quite yet, oddly enough. And there's something with having that big guy on you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. I feel like for us, it's a good thing to really work on older than normally bigger guys. So we're kind of always in that position, and it's really good. I mean, I've been trying to work on it a lot. Sometimes it works, but if they're too big, I get smashed. But I'm sure that's me and bad technique.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's kind of actually I completely forgot. What is your beverage of the day? We're about half an hour into it, and we forgot your beverage of the day.
I was going to
All
bring
right.
up the end.
Look how beautiful that
That's
is.
a fancy can.
Yeah, we got
What
a
is
fancy
that?
can here. This is a Mason Ale Works out of this is a hazy double IPA out of I think they're out of San Diego or something like that. So it's
Oh, all right.
Mason Ale
It's
Works.
kind of like a rat rod.
That's what I
image.
thought. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like an 8%. You know, it's tasty, man.
And 8%.
Wow,
Look,
that's
man,
pretty
I'm not gonna
good.
lie to you. I'm a lightweight nowadays. Anything over 6.5.
You're baking bread with that IPA.
So let's talk about your podcast a little bit. What you created content before? I'm pretty sure I found that you had a podcast before Forever White Belt. You did a little bit of like a tech review thing, right? Or comic book, I think it was, or
Yeah, it
so
was.
what led you into wanting to start a jiu-jitsu podcast?
Yeah, so I love just producing stuff, right? So if I just like creating stuff. So if I've experimented since the first .com kind of thing, you know, I'm a techie by nature. I'm originally a web developer from 100 years ago, and I had an old podcast from since 2008 called Nerd Stalker, and we would cover the early days of the tech startups and back then like Netscape and go to Apple events and all these things and review all this stuff. So we did a podcast, did some YouTube stuff as well. And so I got proficient at doing that for a really long time. And then obviously with the jiu-jitsu thing, haven't fallen in love with it. And then, you know, COVID hits too. And what else do we have to do? Start creating some content there and let's see what goes from there. I'm a big fan of jiu-jitsu podcasts. I listen to several of them and, you know, I've whittled them down to the few that I can kind of relate with now, you know, Elbows Tight being one of them. And so I just love doing it. I love meeting people. I really like people. And, you know, everyone has a really cool story, you know, whether they think they don't or they always do, right? So these questions oftentimes just sort of prompt these, you know, oftentimes I like to be an observer, right? I let them sort of go. You guys really have the art of the conversation, which is fantastic and amazing talent unto itself. But I just go from there, and I like to extract that content and that gold from those people because they're the experts. You know, they're the ones with all the years of experience, whatever it may be, or their philosophies that are much more articulate and much more intelligent than myself. You know, presumably, or most of the time they are.
Well,
go ahead.
well, I was listening to your podcast today, right? Because I was trying to internet stalk you, right, before this started.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
was like, Travis, send me some stuff so I can check it out, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, man, I couldn't find it out. I was thinking, man, you're really eloquent and clear on your podcast, and that's nice. I was like, you know, very professional, very clear. I was like, man, he does not sound anything like me. He was very, you know, it was good. I liked it. But, you know, it was good.
No, I told
Thank you.
Adolfo after. If you guys I can't say enough. If you guys haven't listened to Forever White Belt podcast, you're missing out. It's his production quality and everything is just fantastic. And one of the things that he does that I try to change on our podcast is give a better description of the guest and kind of like what went on with the episode. Adolfo does a whole monologue of the episode beforehand, usually about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and it's great because you're like John said, you're very articulate. You know, you choose your words very selectively, and it's great because I'm like, man, our podcast sucks.
Well, that and I felt like he was a real kindred, like the same reason we started the podcast. It's like real people, real jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
What are the struggles? What are we dealing
Yeah.
with? And, you know, what are we doing about it? And, you know, I
Right.
felt like that was pretty much the same thing with yours.
Yeah.
So with yours, why didn't you go for? Why'd you go? Because ours was started kind of like to document our journey and talk to other people and find their struggles and hopefully find that commonality and that common ground between brand new practitioners or someone going through the blue belt blues and then be like, oh man, this person literally is speaking to my heart right now. When you thought of doing your podcast, was it more of I want to interview people and just hear their story, or is there a person that you're kind of making it for?
Yeah. There's a couple things. So with Nerd Stalker, I learned that a lot of these things are, you know, leadership and psychology, right? It all sort of boils down to that. And so I found that in jiu-jitsu, there was so much to dig up there from those perspectives, right? From the practitioner is what's their psychology in terms of their, like you said, your journey, right? Depending on where you are, whether you're, beginning white belt, that's an interesting psychological process that you're going through, the fears and
Sure.
the expectations of that kind of thing. And with the champion and the black belt competitors, that's a whole other different psychology, right?
Oh
There's
yeah,
the
100%.
that sports psychology, right? There's a whole practice to that unto itself, and so it really intrigued me, all those different type of mindsets and the struggles that they go with too. We see them as these super champions and these people that are monsters, and they go to these scary academies that are competition academies, like let's say Autos or something like that with Michael Lira Jr. And then you talk to these people and they open up and they tell you, their concerns, their fears, or whatever, or oftentimes they're transitioning to other things like business, right? So open up their own academies. So then you learn about things in like leadership, right? And what does that entail in terms of being a leader for an academy? And then that's a whole sort of realm unto itself, which is really fascinating, right? And then the business practices of running a business in general, or let alone an academy, because an academy is a really weird thing. And I often mention this on the podcast, is that you're wearing all these different hats, right? So you're the teacher, you're the jujitsu expert, you're the tax guy, you're the marketing guy, you're the, all these different hats you have to wear. And oftentimes you're also the psychologist too, right? Because you're interacting with all these different people with all these different concerns and all these different expectations. And it's just a really fascinating space to sort of dig into jujitsu. And it seems not untapped, but kind of untapped. I haven't seen a lot of research in terms of psychological research in terms of jujitsu, right?
Yeah, no, I can relate to that because I'm going to college right now for organizational leadership, and we talk a lot about diversity and having organizations with an eclectic group of people and the pros and cons of it and whatnot. And the one thing that I love about jiu-jitsu is no matter where you go, who you are, what you believe, who you love, no matter what, if there's that simple thing of just, I like choking people, you like choking people, you can honestly go anywhere and you get along with just about anyone. Like some schools obviously have like, the brutes and, they're like, I don't want to talk to you, stupid blue belt or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's honestly the group of people that do jujitsu is so vast. And that's kind of like what you talked about, right? Their stories are insane for some of these people. Like they're like, it's not, I'm not that interesting, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, bro, that's a crazy story. Like, I'm just like, people find our story kind of interesting. We're both Navy vets and how we got to where we are and whatnot.
Totally.
And, but it's so interesting, the type of people that come into jiu-jitsu. I saw a black belt the other day doing a Carlson Gracie Jr. Seminar. And I was like, if you saw this guy in the street, you would have no idea this guy is a killer. You know what I mean? And that's what I love.
Isn't that
about
incredible?
it too.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's how I felt at a Gracie seminar, the one we went to years ago. And I was like, man, some of those people in the room, I'd only been doing jiu-jitsu for maybe a year. And I was like, I would have never thought these guys were straight up. They look like Carrot Top out there in a gi. And I was like, I would have never thought it. But they were legit,
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
It's
Have you ever
amazing.
met anyone that you were surprised, kind of like that, to where you're like, oh man, this dude is insane. I would have never guessed.
The first academy that I went to, I said, as I mentioned, I was a nightmare beginner, super spaz, right? They would put me with this blue belt, strong young lady, because I was just a starter, right? And I didn't know what I was doing. And she would just, I couldn't believe how she would just handle me, right? Because I didn't know anything. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a cakewalk. I watched, Ezekiel's on YouTube or something like that, right? So all day, man. And I was that guy doing that to, to women and kids and whatever, man. And and she would handle me. And then at my academy too, we have this smaller brown belt who's just phenomenal, man. And he's just a little wiry guy, very, skinny, smaller guy. But man, he gets the best of some really big guys and just gets position on them all the time. And it's just so inspiring to see that, right? Because you're just like, you think to yourself, I'm never going to be able to handle these type of people, right? I'm just a lowly, whatever, white or blue belt or wherever you may think you may be. And I need to stay in this lane. But then you see someone like that and you're like, my goodness, wow. Wow, that's so inspiring, right?
Adolfo, have you competed at all?
I've only been in one competition. Yeah, and yeah, it didn't go so great. I was bronze medalist out of 3 people. So yeah,
That's good. Hey,
Yo,
all right,
medal's
all
a
right.
medal, bro. I ain't got
Yeah.
I
one.
was
so.
curious on. So I assume
but
you
I
did
wanna
it by
compete more.
age and weight.
yeah,
You
yeah.
did it
So
by age and weight.
yes and no. So yeah, so it was Masters 5, man. And the thing is I'm light for my age. Usually guys my age are much heavier because that's how metabolism tends to work, right? Usually. So I had to compete 2 weight classes up, right? So I'm going against
Ooh.
like
Wow.
230, guys who are 230
Wow.
pounds, and I'm a 170 pounder. And these guys were no joke. And I mean, I held up as much as I can, but it was the typical thing where, if I got impatient, I end up like trying to pull guard or something stupid. And then it's just their weight right on top of me. And of course, it's Kimura Town for Adolfo at that point, right? So, yeah. But it was a
just
blast,
curious because, well, for your situation, it probably didn't work out so well because they were so large. But that was the first time I went in, and it was someone in my age group and my weight class. So I was curious if that equated to your gym. If you find yourself going with people that are same age, same weight class, or if you're, going up against bigger guys or maybe way younger. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I go all over the place. So, there's not a lot of guys my age at my academy. But there are a few older guys, but sometimes they're in different time classes or something like that. But I am the elder statesman, I believe, of the academy. Maybe there's like 2 other guys. So yeah, I'm competing, or not competing. I'm training with, because these are my training partners, right? With
Right.
young white belts, females sometimes too. Sometimes really big guys, and the belt ranges. They vary. All over the place. So yeah, that's kind of it's
What's
fun
your
work.
average size of your class?
Oh, at this point, it's changed since COVID, right? So obviously it was very small. We were huge pre-COVID, right? There was tons of people for us, and gosh, he had I don't even know what his count was, maybe a couple hundred or something at one point, and
Wow.
then it scaled down, geez, to less than 50%, like everyone, right? Much less than 50%, I think, during COVID, and then it's been growing fast back up again. I don't know the entire numbers, but a typical class size is, I don't know, anywhere from 10 to 25 people per class, something like that.
That's pretty good. I was curious because I noticed when I was in San Diego, they have a lot more gyms there. And I'd go to class, and we'd easily have 2 or 3 black belts, a bunch of brown belts, a couple purples, a lot of blues in class. Where we're at right now, honestly, there's only 2 gyms in the entire county. So for our class, it's 1 black belt, the instructor. You might have 1 purple belt, and then it's a couple blues and a bunch of whites.
Yeah, and
So
1
it's just
brown belt.
interesting.
1 brown belt. Cody,
Wow.
the owner, is the brown belt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and honestly, everyone is homegrown besides Cody. Cody's
Yeah.
the only one that's not home. Well, and Professor Sean is not homegrown, obviously. But everyone in the class are purple belts or blue belts. They all started at white in our school, and it gives like this. We talked about this with Rick Ellis too, because he started at Roy D's Academy. He was one of his first students in Bend, Oregon, and he talks about how the atmosphere is so different when everyone starts off on the same foot. And honestly, I always say this. I honestly feel like that's the reason why our game is the way it is because we started with a large group of people, and it was day 1 for everyone besides Cody,
Yeah.
who was a 4-stripe blue belt, brand new purple belt at the time. And it's quite interesting. But
That's
what is
such a cool
typical
story.
class like in yours? What's the typical class like for you guys? Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, no, definitely. It's kind of cool looking back now.
Yeah, we can relate to that now because, like I said, during COVID, we lost so many people, right? So it was like starting over. So it was like all these people coming in
That's
at
interesting,
baselines,
yeah.
similar to what you've sort of mentioned. I mean, it's not exactly like your guys's because your story is really fascinating. And I encourage you guys to go listen to Forever White Belt episode with Travis, where he goes into this in
Thank you.
detail, because it is a really interesting story. But yeah, so we can relate now, and today was promotion day as of this recording right today.
I
So
want to hear all about that.
so watching that was really cool, really inspiring, really moving because it does sort of relate to what you said in terms of like all these people that, decided to go back when they felt safe to go back, right? And sort of how we've grown together now on all these different ages and all these different genders and different skill sets and things like that, right? And now it's really cool to see all these white belts coming in. Thank goodness, right? And this growing bigger class of blue belts, because we were all white belts, having come in and everyone's sort of ground level, and now they've advanced through this time and all this hard work. And then, everyone else sort of shifting, and then it sort of gets smaller and smaller as you go up. We have our second black belt now, the Tryfon's first black belt that he's awarded, and just a handful, maybe 4 brown belts, and quite a few blue belts now, and a big, nice group of white belts, healthy group of white belts. So yeah, it's really neat to see sort of this reset happening in what I imagine is a lot of academies.
Yeah, probably. So you guys only have 2 black belts in class right now?
Yeah, that's what it's now. Yeah, that's where we're at now.
I can't wait till the day where we see someone get promoted to black belt in our school. I think that would be phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
So what was testing like for you guys today? Was it round robin, king of the hill, like
technique?
What
do you have to show?
No, we don't. We don't test. So we're
Oh, really?
no academy that I've been to. A lot of them in Northern California, they don't test. There's not. So when I hear about people testing too, I'm always and I believe Roy Dean's stuff. He's famous for that, right? I watch these beautiful videos on these tests and these grueling type of endeavors. Yeah. So with us, it's just one of those things where the black belt is, he makes the decision of when a different individual, and he'll give them feedback in front of the entire class, right, on promotion day in terms of, well, you deserve this because of this, but you need to work on X, Y, and Z, whatever. So there was a lot of iteration there, a lot of feedback, which is, transparent feedback, which is super important to get often, for someone throughout their whatever you want to call it, your journey of jiu-jitsu, But yeah, it's a trip that to me, it's kind of trippy that some academies test and, some don't, and that whole thing.
So I'd be curious for myself. If anyone tells me I'm testing again, I don't think I'll ever show up. I get so much anxiety. Like even today, I would imagine the seminar, right? Man. And I wonder if it's just me. So I'm going to a seminar today, and I'm like, I have anxiety over a seminar. And I'm like, is this everyone? Like I'm driving there and I'm like trying to take some deep breaths. I'm like, why do I have anxiety going to a seminar? And I don't know maybe it's just me. I don't know if it's everyone. Same with promotions. If they're like, hey, you're testing, I'm like, I'm not going to show up. I'm going somewhere else. I'll be unavailable that day. And that's just how I am now. I mean, I don't know how it is for everyone else, so I'd be curious to know. But do you get any anxiety for seminars, or if there's a testing?
Seminars, not so much, because I feel like, it's weird. I still go in with that perspective that I'm the client, right? In a way that it still is sort of a business transaction in a way. And I think a lot of people forget that, right? Oftentimes with jiu-jitsu too, that there is this relation where we are the customers, really, right? It's a business, and your instructor is someone you're paying, right, to teach you in a way. But, you also, share, it's weird how things intertwine sometimes. And I think that's what makes jiu-jitsu so unique, and why I think it's such a cool use case study. I wish someone would do a study on this and how unique this kind of business practice is, right? Because there is a customer aspect to it and a business aspect to it, but there's this personal sort of intertwining as well that gets kind of blurred. But with me, the promotion day, I do get anxiety about that, because I go through all these narratives in my head in terms of like, what am I going to get, kind of thing. What if it gets to this? And, I'm a middle-aged man now, so I cry over everything, right? So I'm watching Netflix and I'm like,
don't tell me that.
Or some
that.
commercial. Yeah. I don't know what's happening to me. And so I get anxious, and you know what? And I get really emotional when I see peers and what I consider now friends, right? And people I really like at the academy getting promoted or whatever too, because you've seen their hard work and you've worked with them, right? And you've given them some advice too.
Absolutely.
And you only want the best for them if you're a decent human being. And so you get you get emotional. So there's all these weird feelings in terms of promotion day or whatever. But seminars, it's more like, what am I gonna take? What's the transactional sort of thing? Am I gonna get a lot from this or not? And I think you guys have more experience with that because I haven't been to a lot of seminars, but it's tough for me to retain a lot of information in short periods of time because of my ADD.
Well, me too. But maybe when I think about it, it's more of a fear of expectation. Like, is there a certain expectation when you're wearing that blue belt that you should know this when you go into those things? And I don't know, Travis, do you feel anything like that?
I think for seminars, no, not really. When I'm, well, let me rephrase that. A little bit in a seminar, not much. Like I'm a very chill person. Like it's like, look, I don't know what I don't know. So I mean, I'm not gonna get upset if like someone's like, you should know this. Like, well, I don't. So I'm sorry. You know what I mean? But there is that little bit of, and it's not so much a black belt, right? Because a black belt knows that people learn different things. There's no set curriculum for any jiu-jitsu belt, right? People get it at different points, knowing different things in different time frames, right? And that's okay, right? So if I'm pretty sure black belts know, like, look, this guy may have a blue belt on him and he doesn't know a simple thing like this, but that's okay. He probably just has never taught it, and it wasn't a curriculum for him to get his blue belt. That's okay. Where I do get a little bit of anxiety is when it's a lower belt and I'm doing the technique with them, and I'm like, I have no idea how to do this, and I have a blue belt on me, and this guy is crushing this technique, and I am having a hard time.
I'm like, God, give him his blue belt.
I'm like, we need to switch real quick. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be honest. That's the time.
Jesus, please promote him. So I could tap and not feel so bad.
Yeah. You know, and that's honestly the time when anxiety comes, or rolling with a lower belt. To be truthful, right? Sometimes you get a little anxiety of like, man, this guy's like really smashing me right now, and you know, it's like, do I deserve this blue belt on my waist? And it's like everyone always talks about. You have some good days, you have some bad days, you have some good rolls, you have some bad rolls. Like it's just it just happens. But at seminars, man, I'm like, yo, I'm a sponge. I'm here to take as much as I possibly can. Don't show me no 16-step Berimbolo to Kimura.
I told you today, I was like, I'm lost at this point, so let's just try to get through it.
Do you ever have that kind of anxiety, like when you're rolling with a lower belt, or when you're getting shown something and you don't know it, but you're like, look, man, I got 2 stripes on my blue belt now. I'm seasoned. You know, people looking at me like a leader in this school. Like, do you have any anxiety when it comes to that
whooping up on these white belts? I got to get this.
Well, I think for me, it goes back to that whole being, the middle age thing where I made that decision where I'm just going to push through this no matter what. I'm just not, this is the one thing that's not going to go in the closet with the, the juggling, the unicycle and the juggling stuff, right? So I've kind of like, I've kind of like did the whole F it kind of thing where like, F it, I'm just, if I don't know it, I don't know it, if, whatever. And in terms of just rolling with lower belts or something and they get the best of you or whatever, I found oftentimes, like when I was working on my turtle, for instance, right, in these weird defensive positions, I'm not announcing it to them as we're rolling, right? I'm not saying, today I'm going to work on turtle, or today I'm going to work on defense. So I'm just going to let you sort of go at me, right? And I'm not going to put up a lot of offense because I'm only working defense. So obviously they're going to get to a point where they're going to get the best of me. But they may think they got the best of me, but really I'm just working on something. So I don't know if there's that formal conversation ever with everyone, that, because you have to think some people are working on certain stuff. Otherwise you're just not going to get better. And that's one of the things I love about Jujitsu, right? Is I'm a big fan of like the agile sort of methodology, right? In terms of business and in workflow and iterating to improvement, right? And Jiu-Jitsu just seems to be a natural sort of correlation with that sort of practice as well. And if you practice these things enough and you tweak them, you slowly get better and incremental every day, or you're trying new things and you make quick changes so that, hey, I can fix this today. It didn't work tomorrow, whatever, I can change it for this or that. But you're not having this conversation with your training partner usually about every single thing. I remember one of my lower belts, or a lower belt that I was working with, got the best of me when I was working on some open guard stuff, right, that I'm not particularly great at, some lasso or something like that. And he won the sparring session or whatever, right? And he celebrated, afterwards, and I got that ego though inside of me was a little like kind of butthurt about that or something, right?
Were you flexing on, bro? Like, wait a second.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, and I wanted to say something. Why isn't anyone telling him that's not cool to celebrate after, we do this training, whatever practice roll or whatever, and that I'm trying something, but then you just got to let those things go. You really do. And you got to remember, even when you think you're getting the best of someone, hey, maybe they were just working on some weird thing, that they need to get better at.
I know it's like when white belts brag about tapping a higher belt or something like that, and it's like, look, man, I hate to break it to you. I mean, we have some killer white belts. Don't get me wrong.
Honestly, we do. And they've been white belts for probably going on 2 years. They're easily blue belts at this point.
But it's like that newer guy. He's been going to class 6-7 months. Maybe got a wrestling background. You know what I mean? It's like, and he gets like a brown belt or a purple belt. The seasoned purple belt. He's like, bro, I got him. He's like, honestly, I think he might have let you, to tell you the truth, or you might have actually got him, But it's like the whole ego thing. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I've celebrated after a roll before because I didn't.
I knew it. I knew it, Travis. I knew it.
Yeah.
Travis is being nice right now. I can tell you right now, we got a guy. I hope he listens to this. Z, really good wrestler, young kid. What is he? 21, 22.
Yeah, he's about to join the Navy.
He's the last person that's put me in a submission that had me tapped that was legit. He got me in like a mean anaconda, and I'm like, whatever. Like, give this guy his blue belt. He nailed that shit. He's got a lot of. He's good. Like, he might sometimes you come into this stuff and you have a lot of experience and you're really good, and
he's wrestled for like 11, 12 years. So grappling is grappling, right? And the biggest difference between wrestling and grappling is, do you like to lay on your back or not? It's there's a lot of the same positions. There's a lot of the same moves. A lot of the same moves that just end up to submissions in jiu-jitsu that you can't do in wrestling. You know what I mean? But it's the wrestling helps a lot.
When I hear someone say, I wrestled for 10 years, I'm like, shit.
Right.
Like, I know it's going to be a tough one. Yeah,
I was a black belt in judo, right? And it's another one.
Yeah, I just did judo for 20 years, and I'm like, oh my god,
great.
Looks like I mean, out for the night.
I'm pulling guard immediately.
Conversely, that's one of the things you got to worry about, though, right? Is that blue belt? I mean, I've met blue belts that have black belt triangles, right? And they have triangle black belts or brown belts or something like that, right? But that's kind of all they have. It could have been that. So that's another trap you can get stuck into if you don't, allow yourself to, fail or lose to white belts or whatever it may be your concern, right?
Yeah, when I first started rolling with our professor, the one of the first things he said to me was, he's like, yeah, I didn't tap you, but you didn't do anything. He's like, so you didn't progress at all. You just played super safe. And he's like, I mean, if you're not trying to get tapped, that's great. He's like, but what did you gain from that roll? And I started to think, I was like, oh man, he's right. I play a very defensive game when I feel like someone's dominating me. And then I'm like, well, at least I didn't get tapped. But at the end of the day, how am I going to get better at those positions or that person dominating me? You know what I mean?
I would say that's sometimes a victory. If you're rolling against a black belt and he doesn't tap you and you're defensive the whole time, that's kind of a victory.
It's a victory, but he was trying to, and maybe Adolfo, you can connect with this also, but he was saying like, I didn't take any risks to get out of the position. I just accepted the position.
Yeah, that's
you know
true.
what I mean? Like, have you ever been in those moments when you're rolling with someone, you're like, you know what? This guy's just obviously way better than I am. I'm just going to lay here and just try not to die.
There has been that. Yeah. But usually the higher belts, or someone that's much better than you will know, right? They'll let you work to some extent, or maybe they're working their weak side or something like that. Right. And so that's an opportunity for you to, okay, yeah, you can get me when you want or whatever, but you're going to now see what little or what I have up to this point. Right. Maybe I'll try my A game on you and see how far I can get. Maybe this isn't the time for me to start playing, the stuff that I'm experimenting with, or I need to develop more. I don't know. It's sort of, what are you going to do there, right?
Right. No, absolutely. So talking about rolling with black belts real quick, this is something that John and I have talked about, is our mindset rolling with a higher belt. Many of them have told us,
don't wrist lock them. It's a bad idea.
Don't wrist lock them. First of all, wrist locks are 100% legal and legit. So if you're listening to this and you don't like wrist locks, you could just go ahead and skip to the next episode. No, but when you're rolling with a higher belt, what is your mindset? Are you trying to tap them, or if you do get a submission, are you kind of easing into it and letting it go because you're like, I don't want them to think I got here because I was being too spazzy?
Yeah, it depends how high a belt, right? So if we're going against Emma, since we're blue belts, right? We're going with the purple belt. You're trying, right? Typically, right? You're really going for what you can and see what you can accomplish, and you're really going for it. At brown belt, if you're going with the brown belt, then yes, with some caveats in that you know there's going to be some limitations there. Probably, if you have a real legit brown belt, right? Brown belts oftentimes are essentially black belts, right? That are just sort of waiting to be a black belt. So there's that. And then more with the black belt, you're just sort of like, you're almost displaying what you got in terms for them. They're pretty much assessing you maybe to some point, or they're using you as a warm up or something like that to some extent too, right? So yeah, I mean, there's expectations and you realize that. But yeah, there have been times when I've got like a brown belt or even, a purple belt in a position where I'm like, whoa, I got them in this really precarious situation here, and I see it on their face, and I don't know, should I really go for the finish at this point? And that hesitation is usually when you lose it, right?
Yep.
Or you give it up out of like respect or something like that. But that's just the internal monologue that I get with me. I don't know if everyone's the same way. It sounds like you guys have some relative experience with that too.
No, I definitely agree, and that's why I kind of brought it up, because there have been times where I felt like I was in a position that I probably in my head I didn't deserve because of the person I was rolling with, right? And it's just like this such this dichotomy of like, did I earn this position or did they give this position? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
I want to earn it. I don't want to. If I'm rolling against someone, since I'm a colored belt now, I want to know that I earned that position. I don't want people to give me things really anymore. You know what I'm saying? And if that's not, I don't want to sound egotistical or anything like that, but I want to know that, hey, this blue belt on my belt with these 2 stripes, because I'm seasoned like you are, Adolfo. Like, like I want to know that this is on my belt or this is on my waist because I know something. You know what I mean? Like I can get to these positions. I don't need everyone all the time, you know what I mean, to hand them to me. What about you, John? How do you feel about it?
I think it's a good point, and I've rolled with some higher level belts, mainly black belts, and it throws me off because sometimes they'll lay there, and it's just like they're just laying there, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do at this point. Like, I need you to fight.
Yeah.
And some of them I'm friends with, and I'm like, hey man, can you not do that, and can you just let's roll? And those are the ones that I get the most out of. If they just lay there and it's kind of like, let me see what this young blue belt or white belt can do. And honestly, it messes me up because I'm like, I need you to react so I can move forward. But I've only honestly once or twice rolled with an upper belt where I felt like I had them. And honestly, the reason I stopped is I felt like it was a respect issue. And I was like, man, do I really want to do this here?
Yeah.
Like, they don't know me. I don't know them. Should I kind of lay off here and let them save face? And that's what I ended up doing.
How do you handle those situations, Adolfo?
The same way. Yeah, I'm often, it's like this respect thing in the back of my, it's just the way I was raised, right? It's always to respect authority and that kind of thing, and it's this weird thing where I'm like, yeah, I got him in this weird position. Yeah, like you said, lightning struck maybe twice a year or something like that. And I have them maybe in a weird position or something that's not their game, maybe a leg type of entanglement or something, some crazy footlock or who knows what. And they're probably experimenting with some stuff. That's not their thing too. And I have to, all right, I'm thinking this in my head. I got to respect what they're doing too. So I'm not necessarily going for the kill. If anything, I'm hoping that they're watching my game so that they can glean something and give me back some feedback to improve, what little I know. That's sort of where I'm coming from with it.
So we mentioned earlier about kind of a loyalty or mutual respect with your academy. I've seen this going on the internet of people talking about loyalty within a school, and at the end of the day, I am paying someone for their knowledge to teach me their knowledge.
Interesting.
if it is transactional, right? It's not for free. I'm using my word. It's capitalism, right? It's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
like
It's a
I'm using
business.
someone else yes, it's a business, right? If I wasn't paying them for a goods or service, then it wouldn't be a business, right? Do you feel like there has to be a certain amount of loyalty to your academy, or do you see it as purely transactional, and does that go back and forth?
Yeah, I think it does. I think there is a shade of gray in that too, and it depends on the person too, because we get people that are, that are they travel for a living, right? There's pilots, there's whatever you have, first responders or whatever that come on certain days, and they can only train at different places close to somewhere else or whatever. And so yeah, cross training is encouraged where we're at, so that's not really a thing. But yeah, you do establish relationships, right? So there is a semblance of connection to the academy and to the people, which sort of like transcends the business, simple transactional aspect of it too. But that can't be lost. I think a lot of people tend to lose that, and then it can become a weird sensei type of situation, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the place where I come from with it, in that I'm cool with cross training. I haven't done any cross training yet. I would like to, that'd be interesting because I'm not a big traveler or anything, especially with how times have been lately. But I would love to, I would love to go to other places and train a bunch.
We've done that many a times with the podcast, especially trained at other places
right.
and whatnot.
Yeah, you guys.
And one of the places is here in where we live, and we went and trained there. He went first, and then I went. And one of the people at our school was like, "Oh, you went and trained there? Why would you do that?" And I'm like, well, one, I'm trying to get one of their black belts to come on the podcast, and it was an agreement. And two, like, I want to go meet other people and share this experience and this journey with them,
So loyalties, that's an interesting topic. Truth and Hypocrisy podcast, that's another one we listen to. And they have a segment where they talk about loyalty. So I think in me and Travis's case, it's interesting because we're on our third black belt in 4 years.
Yep.
Where our schools changed. That's a lot, right? That's like resetting every time we get a new black belt. They don't know us. They don't know how many times we come to class. They don't know what injuries you may have had you've worked through. They don't know, right? So that's 3 resets at this point. And I think we're almost 4 years into this journey.
Yeah. Yep.
So loyalty's interesting. And the way I've come to it now, my loyalty's not to the instructor. It's to my friends that go to class with me. That's where my loyalty goes.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly because of our situation, right? Because like you just mentioned, we've had black belts come and go, and my loyalty would be to the school, right?
It's to my friends,
Cody,
my fellow people on the journey.
If all my friends were to leave the school, or it would close down or whatever, then yeah, I mean it'd be a different situation. But I feel like we are where we are because of the school and because of the owner and whatnot. And
I wonder how unique that situation is.
I would love if you guys at home have had a similar situation. Please hit us up on social media or comment on YouTube or something like that, and let us know if you had a similar situation. Because I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of, and this is not to trash talk black belts out there or anything like that, but I'm sure there's a lot of shady black belts out there that use their position to get something that they want, and then they dip out on it. You know what I mean? And
or it's just a different type of academy, right? I mean, I went to when I was evaluating academies to go to, when I moved out of San Francisco, I went to a particular academy, and day one, a guy, he was like a new guy, he came in, he was a friend of the instructor, and he immediately went for this joke on me, right? The old like kind of grabbing the throat and thumbs in the esophagus thing kind of thing. And I was looking at the instructor and I was looking at the students, and I'm like, what's happening here? Is this allowed? Kind of thing. And so it's just there are different cultural dynamics in different academies, obviously, right? And so so you can make the choice to leave, is the thing at different places. But you guys are in this unique situation where you are where you are, and there's only a couple options, and you've had these black belts sort of rotate. That's really interesting, as opposed to like, I'm a business owner, this is my place. This person's a business owner, this is their place, and there's another business owner, and you can choose which one to go to, as opposed to like, you were a student at this one place and the business owner is gone, insert another black belt, insert another one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very different, very
So,
unique.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey for us, and I think it's helped our game, tell you the truth, because when our current professor showed up, he was like, "Man, you guys suck at the basics." he's like,
You made me laugh. I'm like, yeah, here's my belt. Whatever. Let's start over.
He's like, he's like, it's not against any of you guys. It's not your fault that you don't know what you don't know, like we mentioned earlier, right? But he's like, we're not gonna do anything fancy for a long time. And I was like, thank God. Like, because COVID hit and Cody was teaching us and he was just kind of doing what he could to create a class and give us the best value possible for our dollar in a horrible situation around the world. And I'm very grateful for that. But when Sean showed up, it was like he had a curriculum. He knew what he wanted to see, and he knew how we wanted to roll. You know what I mean? When you're doing technique, do you ever try to pull your instructor over to make sure you get eyes on you at least once, or do you just kind of go through the motions and hopefully you get it from watching him or looking at other people like, oh, you put your arm there.
And man, I'm like,
It's I often tell people I'm like the worst student, right? I'm the worst possible student for any instructor, because some people are like visual learners, some people are kinetic learners, some people are like auditory learners, right? They learn by lectures and that kind of thing. I'm all three, and I need to do it over and over and over again, right? Because I'm just all those things. So I'm like, it sucks for my teacher, because I'm gonna be, the first time you show it to me, I'm going to maybe get one part of it, and then I'm going to say, hey, can you show me again? And then my poor training partner, I'm going to have to, fumble through it with them too, right? And then, hey, the instructor again. So, kudos to my instructor, because it's that whole process over and over again of not only do you have to tell me what to do, you have to show me what to do, and I physically have to do it to this person over and over and over again for one technique of the day or something like that, because that's the type of way I learn, right? So that's,
right.
Yeah. It's rough, man.
I'm like, can you move my body into positions you needed?
Yes, and sometimes they do. Right?
So it sounds like you're okay with asking questions in class. Are you never one of those? Because I know a very junior white belts are brand new. A lot of them are going to be intimidated to ask the instructor or the professor a question or to ask to see a technique again. You have no problem with that, I take it.
I try to keep it to, one or two questions, obviously, because there's a point where it's obnoxious, let's face it. But so I try to be respectful of that. But no, not really, And plus, I'm there every day, right? So if not twice a day, and because that's what it takes for me, right? So my joke with my instructor also is that I'm the turtle, right? It's like no one ever picks me first to be on the team, and it's going to take me the longest, right? There's the old story of the turtle and the hare, right? That kind of thing. I'm the turtle, right? I'm that guy that has to show up every day, do it over and over again, and I'm going to incrementally get there, but I'm going to get there, right? That kind of thing. So for me, yeah, it's the grind and the sparing my questions through multiple classes, as much as I can.
So I bring up asking questions, right? Because on your podcast, you've had some phenomenal guests, like absolute legends within the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu art. How do you get these people on your show? Are you simply just asking a question? Is it word of mouth, or you know what I mean? Do you hit them up on Instagram repeatedly? Because I know what I do. I hit people up on
That's
Instagram
what I'm like, Travis. How'd you get Roy Dean on here?
Yeah,
how did we get this?
With Roy Dean?
I
emailed him, I Facebooked him, I Instagrammed him.
Oh my God.
I signed up for
or the strength trainer guys that you guys had. He was
yeah. He was great.
Oh,
yeah,
my God.
all those
and
people
your
start
last
with
guest,
me.
he was amazing under Roy Dean, the black belt
Rick.
gentleman. He was fantastic. Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
Yeah, he spoke to the soul.
Oh, absolutely.
And it all
I love
starts
that.
with just asking the question, right? So
Yeah,
how do you get your guests? Do you just ask the question and hope for the best, or is there a certain technique that you do?
Yeah, so it's been a combination of things. Yeah, so sometimes it's direct. Most of the times it's direct, right? So like you said, Instagram outreach or something like that. Hey, are you interested in being on the show? Blah blah blah. And then there are some times when someone's like, hey, I really like the show. It's a friend of me referred to this. And then I'll follow back and say, oh wow, thank you so much. Would you consider being on the show? That kind of thing, right? So yeah, usually it's that kind of thing. And as Travis, as we spoke to before on the episode that you were a guest on my show was, there's been a lot of like no reactions, right? At times, this is sort of like getting ghosted as well, right? And then there was actually one gentleman who asked me, oh, so how much does this pay? And I'm like. And I'm like, what?
Not much.
You realize this is a jujitsu podcast. Talk about the niche of the niche.
I'm not Joe Rogan,
right?
bro. Chill out.
I'm not getting millions for this.
Yeah, man. So yeah. So usually it's just direct contact, something like that. So I've just been really lucky, I think. But what's really cool, and as you guys know, is what you can learn from these people, right? Man, have I learned a lot from them in terms of like just expanding even your game and your mindset of the game and that kind of thing. And sometimes after the show too, they'll talk to me about specific techniques and things like that I'll go and experiment at the academy with, and just from a selfish perspective, it's been incredible.
Yeah, no, it's awesome because there's always that period before we press record that you guys don't get to see at home, but there's times when we just like talk to these people where we're like they're absolute legends, or we look up to them or whatever, and then when we stop recording, people still want to talk. Chris Hanamuni on our episode, we talked for like half an hour after we stopped recording. You know what I mean? I was almost like, man, maybe I should record this and then put this in
I know,
like, paid content. You know what I mean? And there's
man.
people are so willing to talk. It's phenomenal, and I had a buddy who started a podcast because I have a podcast, and he's like, man, if Travis can have a podcast, I can have a podcast, right? And I told him from the get go, I was like, look, man, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask guests. You know what I mean? John Depp never asks anyone that's any influential at all, but he tries to be here at least.
Well, it's mainly because Travis is big into the IT world, I guess, at this point. I don't use Instagram. I don't know any of that stuff.
Oh, thank goodness.
Facebook.
There's one of you out there.
Yeah.
So how long does it usually take for you to edit an episode?
Oh man, for me, because it's just me, it's usually a week, and as we spoke to before on the other episode too, it's like, we all have lives, right? We all have families or whatever, having responsibilities. Some of us go to school, right? And plus on top of work or whatever, if you're working, and plus just training, right? It's a lot of work. I mean, you guys do video too, which is insane. That's one of the things I learned from Nerd Stalker is I'm not going to do video, man. For this one, it's just going to be audio for now. Eventually, maybe we'll release some video, but yeah, just the sheer amount of editing and then the software selection and all this stuff and mistakes. As we've mentioned before, there have been episodes where with Sean Roberts, I lost everything. Right, I lost everything, and we had to do a do-over, man. And Sean Roberts, being the class act that he is, was totally cool with it, right? And yeah. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, man. With all that stuff.
What's your biggest guest that said yes, that you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm actually about to talk to this person?
Yeah, God, they're all different in different ways to me, but probably Jonathan
Silver
Thomas,
Fox.
maybe.
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
yeah, I love Silver Fox too, but in terms of just social popularity or
I
whatever,
was guessing.
I love the Silver Fox. Carl Prevec is amazing. He's one of those hidden gems. Carl Prevec, who's the Silver Fox. He's a Henzo Gracie black belt. He's a hidden gem, and a lot of people just in general, because he's not this competitive champion, but man, he is so technical. And just look, he's an older, kind of more thinner guy, right? And he is a killer, and he's just phenomenal. And there's a reason Faraz Sahabi has him at TriStar Gym to have him come up and do instructionals. I mean, he works with GSP and all these people and he's famous for his guillotine and all this stuff. So he's a wealth of knowledge, but Jonathan Thomas is one of those guys. He's like the complete package, right? He's trained under Lucas Lepre at Alliance. He's competed champion. He's brilliant, really. He's in high intellect. He's incredibly articulate, and he's super innovative, and he's super savvy, technically savvy in terms of all these social media and YouTube and everything. And he's constantly iterating with his YouTube and everything that he's doing. And that's why he can command so much money now for like these private instructionals and even seminars that he does, right? He's built this empire, if you will, right? All over in Sweden or wherever the hell he is now. Yeah, so he's been a huge one.
So,
But there's been so many.
excuse me. So what was the hardest person to interview? No, I'm just
How dare you? I told you in the very beginning that when we weren't recording, thank goodness.
Yeah, right. Hey, so what would you, like you listen to the show regularly, like you said. So what would your one piece of advice be for a brand new white belt
Oh,
just
that's a
starting
good
out?
one. It's our favorite.
Yeah, favorite,
Here we go,
absolute favorite.
right?
Forever
Yeah,
white belts
so-
got this.
No, and as I mentioned before, trying to distill this the other day to the day one white belt, kid who was just signing up was so incredibly difficult because there's so much to think about. But yeah, it's showing up, right? It's so cliche, right? Showing up, consistency. And there's so much to this. Defense, frames will be your friend. Frames, not hugging, not pulling people in. I guess there is a time for that. But typically it's going to be frames, and watch out for your hands when you're framing people. And your cardio, being aware of your breathing is huge. And just understand that, God, all these cliches, that it's such a long journey, man. But it's so, there's so much reward to it. You get so much out of it, right? On so many different levels. It's so stimulating physically and mentally too, right? I mean, I feel like I'm doing in the gi. I feel like it's a Rubik's cube, right? When I'm doing it live, it's like this kinetic Rubik's cube or something like that. But for you white belts out there, yeah, play defense. Get really good at defense.
Show up and play defense. John, you got anything else, man?
Just breathe. That's
No,
all
I think I need more
No, I don't
questions
have
for
any
Adolfo.
questions. I feel like we're on the same wavelength. I think he hit it all. And before he answered that question, I was thinking in my head, I was like, well, this is what I would say. And I was like, oh, well, he said the same thing I'd say, so we're good.
Nice.
Well, hey
Nice.
Adolfo, it's getting kind of late. You're over on the West Coast with us. I'll be respectful of your time, like you said to me. So thank you so much for coming on, man. This was a blast, and I would not mind doing this again in the future. Just throwing it out there. Maybe we could do like a weekly
thank you,
show.
gentlemen. Yeah, I know we should.
Where
Jeez.
can people find you at?
Forever White Belt, you guys go go search for Forever White Belt. You'll find us on all the socials and all the places. And thank you so much, John Travis, for your time. It was super fun to be on the show.
No, thank you so much, man. It was a great pleasure of ours. I was greatly looking forward to having you on. So, well, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. Don't forget to go check out Adolfo's amazing podcast, Forever White Belt podcast. And then other than that, I don't have anything else. John?
Nope, got nothing. No oil checks here.
Oh, he said it. Dang.
I did it just for him. I was just messing him up.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll have a good night. Later.
Cheers.